Alright, hello everyone and welcome to our channel. Today on The Forge we have Chaos Knights versus the returning Battle Sisters again. And so a 2,000 point battle report, so like the video if you like the video, comment if you want to comment, share if you want to share it, and more to come. And stay tuned to the end to see our new recap addition to the show. And here comes the armies. Alright. Hello everyone, so now I have 1,905 points, I believe, of the new data slate balance sheet and stuff. It's a huge gap. So essentially for my Warlord, Knight Tyrant with Penelope, or what's it? How do you pronounce it? The Penelope of Cursed Knights, so basically sort of an Armor of Contempt. I have a Knight Rampager with Traitor's Mark. I have 2 War Dog Executioners, 2 War Dog Carnivores. I know the models are not perfectly right, but that's what I got. And then 2 War Dog Brigands, which are pretty good. And so there are a few things. So I like to run pure armies. I'm not really going super heavy on meta tournament, but with the gap of 95 points, if I wanted to, I could have brought a bunch of Nurglings in to function as screeners, point holders, all that kind of stuff. So I could have done that, but I don't want to. And that is 1,905 points of Chaos Knights.
Okay, once again, this is designed to be a balanced Sisters list that can kind of deal with any threat. Starting from the front, this red Battle Sister squad will be split up with an emulator, so I can park 5 with bolt guns on my home objective to get those miracle dice over the course of the game, which I found are very crucial, especially in turn 2 and 3. And then 5 with multi-melta gun, and then the Sister Superior. All my Battle Sister squads are built the same way, with full meltas and plasma pistols. The green squad has a Palatine and a Dialogus. The Palatine has the Blade of St. Eleanor. The Dialogus has, I believe it's Spirit of the Martyr, or sorry, I apologize, Saintly Example, so that when he dies I get an additional D3 Miracle Dice. The blue squad is just an extra Sister squad. They may be paired with the Triumph. This yellow squad is the Seraphim with Flamers. Not sure how I'll use them yet this game. Then I have 2 squads of Crusaders, 2 squads of 3-man Arco-Flagellants, a Rhino, which I may put one of my sister squads in, 2 Exorcists, 2 Castigators, Morvenval, and 3 Paragons with multi-meltas, 2 swords, and a mace for tank shock, a Penitent Engine for objective play, and then the Calidus Assassin for the same reason.
So for the mission, today we have Deployment, Search and Destroy, followed by Chilling Rain. We're doing a tournament mission essentially, and Deploy Servo Skulls, which I'm not even going to bother to read. We basically push them forward and get more points the closer they are to the opponent's zone, and that is the mission. Alright, so for Secondaries, for Knights, Tactical, you never know, you might get lucky. There's some that I just can't do, but there's some that I can do. Now what about you?
I chose Bring It Down and Deploy Teleport Homers. Bring It Down for obvious reasons, even though math-wise, to max it out at 20 points, I'd have to destroy 5 of his War Dogs plus 1 of his Knights. So I'm not sure if that's achievable, but it is at least a consistent.
With a ton of meltas that you have a good chance.
We'll see. And then Deploy Teleport Homer. On this map, I'm actually worried about it because I either have to get in his deployment zone or the center, so he has some good counterplay. However, with the Deploy Servo Skulls, I should be mostly safe because he does have to leave his deployment zone to push those Servo Skulls towards me. So we'll see.
Yeah, and we'll see. Alright, so for deployment, what's free for me for the Knight Tyrants was basically placing out a few guys to see where his biggest threats were, and then place my guys to counter them. And then the rest was just me putting guys near the objectives where to go, and then just filling out the rest of the spaces. And that was it. That's the only plans I had. What about you?
So, I haven't played Server Skulls before, so it threw me for a loop, but I did place the Calidus Assassin, hopefully out of threat range, since she is a lone op and he can't be targeted unless he's within 12. So I'm in room to hopefully move that Servo Skull, and the Castigator also threatening that side. In my deployment, I do feel a little clogged up. Luckily, due to the change of the towering rules, he won't be able to shoot me. So if he comes into combat, I do have some play there. Initially, I was worried about being so blobbed up, but there's not much I can do in this sort of deployment, and I have some close combat strats that can help me out if he does get into combat turn 1.
Alright, so who goes first, who goes second? So I'll start this off. So what I think is if I go first, I'm going to rapidly take the board and delete a few units off from with shooting, as well as set up for the next turn. Maybe get an early charge off, depending on how well the dice are and stuff like that. Yeah, that's pretty much it. If I get the first turn, I get a tremendous advantage, boxing you in on a game type where we have to push forward. That's what I think. What about you?
I'm not sure if I'd want to go first or second. To be honest, if you go first, you'll have to push the server skulls a little closer. I'm a little bit slower than the army, so that could be good. I'm not too worried about first turn combat, but yeah, we'll see. I mean, it's, you know, if I go first, I get on the objectives. I feel like whoever I get to move them is going to die, and then they're further away from me, so I'll lose the control. And I guess this will be sort of a back and forth, so I'm not sure what I need to focus on. But yeah, I'm not sure if I want to go first or second.
Mm-hmm. And if I go second, I just have a massive target-rich environment, and so, yeah, that's about it. All right, so let's see who goes first. Who? 2, 5. You're up first. All right. Sisters, turn 1.
Okay, so I moved my red emulator over to this point in order to drop out my people within 3 inches so I can control it this turn. We'll see if that was ridiculous or not. Arcoflagellants moved into the center for the same reason. Calidus also moved to tag this point. I'm afraid for her life. Other than that, over here, my Rhino actually dropped off the Battle Sisters inside of it. And I did move, I finagled a little bit. So not too much movement, but I am in a position to move all 3 objectives. I actually had a pretty good shooting phase. My emulator squad that got dropped off, one of the multi-melters got through, doing 5 damage, rolled really well on damage. And I believe, yeah, and then my Exorcist missile launcher, my red Exorcist missile launcher, shot the same yellow War Dog Executioner and was able to do some extra chip damage, so he only has 3 wounds left. And then my pink Exorcist, all the way in the back, was able to tag this Carnivore up front for 6 damage. So very, very good rolls on damage, and a pretty optimal first turn in terms of what damage I inflicted. Okay, so for my turn, I was able to get 3 points of deployed teleport homer. And I was able to move the servo skulls pretty well, I think.
So, for the movement phase, but first, I drew area denial and behind enemy lines for my secondaries. And well, I started movement phase, so War Dog Executioner moved up. Oh, shoot, I forgot to take the morale test for that. Well, I'll deal with that. My War Dog Carnivores, I spent 1 CP to give them Knights of Shade, which basically they just walk through all walls. So they just walked straight up. Night Rampager maneuvered around, take the center objective. Night Tyrant unfortunately has 8-inch move, so he wasn't able to move where I needed him to be. I didn't realize that, so I moved him. He still has some line of sight for some things. Then the rest of the guys moved on to the right side, and that was it. Overview. So that was one of the worst shooting phases I have had. So Night Tyrant fired his Volcano Cannon, got 1 shot, hit, failed to wound. I thought, you know what, he has all these extra missiles and other things, he can easily kill it. So I said, you know what, I'm not going to spend the CP to reroll it. And then he had 1 guy strike missile that hit and did 4 damage to it, and that was it. Everything else just sucked. Then the War Dog Executioner Yellow fired at the squad of sisters, killed like 1 of them, whiffed so hard on his shooting. Then my orange War Dog Brigand at the bottom fired at the Arcoflagellants, and he made like 9 4-up Feel No Pains. He took 1 wound from all its shooting. Then my pink War Dog Executioner fired at the sisters. Actually killed like 2 or 3. Or no, he killed, yeah, 2 or so, yeah. Then the War Dog Carnivores fired their Havoc missile launchers into the Red Squad Sisters of Battle. Killed only 1. And he used the Cherubs and Miracle Dice to keep him alive. And that was pretty much it. That was pretty bad. Yeah, and that was the shooting phase. For the charge phase, the Purple War Dog Carnivore multi-charge Morgan Vol and the Arcoflagellants. And then my other War Dog Carnivore charged the Blue Battle Sisters, because that's really all there was, and Honestly, I really don't care too much for the immolator and stuff. It's pretty much done. And then, yeah, War Dogs also get Carnivores get reroll to charge, so that's why I was able to do that charge. And then the Night Rampager just touched the Arcoflagellant to charge him. And I didn't do it on camera, but I'm going to do it at the beginning of the fight phase. Basically, I'm going to spend a CP for the Purple War Dog Carnivore's Tank Shock. And that is it. So, for the fight phase, the Purple War Dog swung first. My opponent activated a stratagem that allowed him to only swing on the Arcoflagellants. I then did a sweep attack, and because I'm within 9-inch range of the Rampager, I get to reroll once to hit in melee. But my opponent rolled ridiculous amounts of 4-up Feel No Pains for the Arcoflagellants, and I only did 3 wounds to them with a sweep attack of 12 attacks. But, however, my tank charge did kill 1 Paragon suit, so, yeah, tank shock. Then the Red War Dog Carnivore did his sweep attack against the Sisters, killed only 5 because he rolled a ridiculous amount of 5-up saves. Rolling is ridiculous in this game. And then my opponent just picked up the Arcoflagellant. We forgot to record it, but essentially his Morgan Vol just outright killed the War Dog Carnivore, and he didn't explode. And then the Battle Sisters basically just kicked the shins of the War Dog, and it lived fine. Points. Behind enemy lines, not happening. Getting a CP for that. Area denial. I gained this, so 5 points for me. Or is it 6? Hold on. No, it is 5 points. Alright, and yeah, that is the turn.
Okay, I'll do my reserves at the same time as the movement. So up here I brought in my Red Castigator to be 9 inches away from this Brigand. This map is really good for turn 2 strategic reserves because, like, you know, No Man's Land is so close to everything. So I did put him in reserve. So now he's here a little bit closer to that Brigand. The Pink Castigator, I moved so he could have line of sight to this group of War Dogs. The Rhino, I moved up so that I can maybe move block or charge or do something crazy with it. I'm not going to need it to protect any of my units since they, you know, got out. The Pink Executioner in the bottom corner of my deployment zone, I poked him out so that I'd be able to see his War Dogs so that I wouldn't have to fire indirect, and also I'd be able to fire my Hunter Killer and Heavy Bolters. I brought in Crusaders in the other No Man's Land section to tag this objective. I dropped my Calidus in his deployment zone so I could start deploying teleport homers. I moved my Immolator up, so hopefully he's not visible to his Knight Tyrant, and he can, you know, do stuff, shooting, whatever. My Battle Sister, who was left over from that half Battle Sister squad, who has the multi-melta, I didn't move so she could get the heavy bonus for when she shoots any of these War Dogs. Penitent Engine, I circled around, move up to charge this Red War Dog Carnivore. Here in the middle, I moved Morven Vol and this green Battle Sister squad with the Palatine and Dialogist towards the Night Rampager. Triumph, I advanced so she could get as close as possible. Exorcist, I also moved so she could peek through to shoot out her Heavy Bolters and Hunter Killers. My goal this turn was to flood the board and provide so many threats that you know, whatever he does kill, I'll still have a lot in position, and of course I'll have at least 1 round of shooting with them. And that does it for me.
All right.
Okay, so for my shooting phase, I feel bad because I had a combination of really great rolls to his very poor saving attempts. My green squad, it's my favorite combo in Sisters right now, where they have a Palatine and a Dialogist. The Palatine gives them lethal hits even for ranged weapons, and the Dialogist allows me to use any act of faith is automatically 6, and if they're within 6 of the Triumph, I can use unlimited acts of faith. So what I did was, since I have 3 Melter shots, each one I use a Miracle Die, which becomes a 6, which makes it a lethal hit. So for 3 Miracle Dice, I get 3 auto wounds on Meltas. So very, very good. And he unfortunately did not save any of them, so I was able to use 3 more Miracle Dice to turn it to an automatic 18 damage. Additionally, I had very lucky shooting on all the rest of his stuff. My Emulator was able to, with this Red Exorcist, take out the War Dog that was over here by the Emulator. Morven Vol and a combination of my Pink Exorcist and 2 Castigators were able to remove 2 War Dogs here on the other objective. So I had a very, very above average swingy shooting phase where I was able to destroy a lot of his stuff. Okay, Morven Vol's squad as well as the Green Palatine squad made it into combat with the Knight Rampager. I tried to charge my Emulator into his Knight Tyrant, but I failed. I tried to charge my Red Castigator into his Blue War Dog Brigand, but failed. I was successfully charging my Penitent Engine into this Red War Dog Carnivore. He was only 2 inches away. Well, he was less than 2 inches away, so I auto-passed. Okay, so his big Knight Rampager only had 1 wound left in the shooting phase, so my Palatine was able to get in with 1 lethal hit, which gave an automatic mortal wound, so she was able to finish him off in the center. Over here, my Penitent Engine did do 4 wounds to his War Dog Carnivore, and his War Dog Carnivore wiped out my Battle Sister squad. Okay, for secondaries, I had a tremendous turn, so I was able to get 11 points on Bring It Down, 4 for my Deploy Teleport Homer for the Calidus, and then I was able to push up 2 of the primaries to get 7 for the Servo Skulls.
Alright, so we decided to call it because never going to a casino in my life, because obviously I'll have the same luck there. I almost hit nothing. I made almost no saves. I have never had this bad of luck since the last time I played Knights, I think. It's like, I want to collect this army for modeling and stuff, but like, I have to roll better than this. So, alright, MVP, LVP. LVP is obviously the dice, but in all skillness, the Knight Tyrant, he had 1 chance. He did 4 wounds to an Emulator. I thought all the rest of his weapons would easily slaughter it. It didn't. I've never seen such absolute garbage. His one job is to delete tanks. And I've seen it done in one of previous battle report, Genestealer Cults versus Imperial Knights. Imperial Knight Tyrant just deleted every single tank every time it shot at it. So I don't know what the crap happened here. And then MVP, literally because nothing happened, this guy gets to be MVP because he did kill a Battle Sister squad in 2 rounds of combat. That's it. Nothing else. And that was my MVP, LVP. So what's your MVP? Apart from these dice.
Yeah, no, I know. Probably the worst rolling I've ever seen. And I wasn't rolling. I mean, I
and
was
then
rolling
paired with your ridiculous fire rolls. That one, what was it? Flagellant Squad, the orange one, had to make 10 saves, rolled 9 4-ups.
Yeah. I will say for the Flagellants, they rolled well, but I expected them to die, so it was like, oh, happy accident. But I did also roll above average.
Happy accident twice from shooting and melee.
Yeah. Ugh. Well, my MVP, other than the dice, was this Green Palatine squad. I love them. They're my favorite combo. I will take 1 or 2 of them every single game, no matter what. They're so good. They're insane in combat. They're insane in range. They have a lot of ablative wounds with these extra Battle Sisters. They did 18 damage in 1 shooting phase to his big Knight by turning. I used 3 Miracle Dice to make 3 automatic wounds on his Knight, and then turn that to 18 damage. Very good. And then in close combat, same thing. I can do what I often do. I'll sacrifice 5 Miracle Dice to get the Palatine 5 lethal hits through, which is 5 saves at -2, 3 damage each, plus 5 mortal wounds. So very, very good. I love them. Also, anytime they kill a unit, I get a Miracle Die. Yeah, and they're just great. The LVP would be this Rhino. Honestly, yes, this game I didn't have any units that underperformed, again, because it was that bad, the rolling for you. But the Rhino in this matchup ended up not doing anything, just because of the Servo Skulls requiring you to move pretty close. I just was able to not use it first turn, so it was just useless points. And this is actually the first game I wanted to take a Rhino, but he ended up just kind of clogging the way, and so he was a little inconvenient to move around, and that's about it. Not that he did anything wrong, but yeah, in this game he was a non-factor who just got in the way. Mm-hmm. So
and that's our MVP LVPs. The dice.
So the
overall thoughts on the game
are interesting. Initially, I did think you could score at the end of the first turn, but I realized now that was dumb and I should have read the card. Not that came into it too much, but when I was moving the Servo Skulls, just because his army has so few units, he wants to be able to use them each turn. So I was able to move 1 Servo Skull kind of into the corner behind Ruins. So in order to get it, he would have to kind of like make it one of his units worthless by moving it behind those ruins. So that's one thing. And then, you know, in general, my game plan was just to feed out units to sacrifice, because what I assumed would happen was I'd send a unit onto an objective, they'd move it 6 inches, then die, and then I would just do that every turn. I knew Morven Vol and my Green Palatine squad were going to kill a lot, and then I had my Exorcists for the indirect. I overperformed like crazy on them, doing tons of damage both turns, and then the Castigators too. This is a great map for having heavy firepower coming in from reserves, because again, the No Man's Land is so close to the deployment zones, you can essentially get easy fire on anything. So I was able to get both Castigators turn 2 to shoot very, very heavy amounts, and yeah, it was a great game. My game plan again initially was just going to be to send out units and shoot in the meantime, and then once he had too few units to kind of contest, maybe I'd flood the board. But it ended up not being necessary because my rolls were really good, his rolls were really bad. I had still Seraphim and Crusaders in reserve. One of the things that I do like about taking MSU style armies, especially like sisters like this, against, you know, big units like War Dogs, you know, Knights, Wraith Knights, whatever, is that I do have that suffering and sacrifice stratagem, so that all I need is one unit, one of those models in range, engagement range of one of his War Dogs, and I used Suffering and Sacrifice to make it so he had to hit them rather than the big beefy squad he wanted to hit. So I was able to deploy in such a way where if he decided to charge me, he wouldn't be able to do damage, even though he'd be able to get in close. And Morven Vol's squad can fall back, shoot, and charge again, so that's very good. And yeah, so I mean, depending on how many units I have, even for the bigger knights, I could tie them up into combat, making them attack Crusader squads and Arco-Flagellants for a couple turns even, just by throwing them in there, because they move pretty quick, they're pretty easy to move around, and with the nerfs to towering, pretty easy to hide them. This is one of those games where I considered shooting, if I destroyed his brigands and I hide correctly from his big knight tyrant, then maybe I'd be able to essentially move my MSU units around the board with impunity due to the line of sight issues, and then use Suffering and Sacrifice every turn. But yeah, it was a good game. Not much to say. I mean, well, it was it was a good game for me. I definitely will be living off this high for months. Rolled very well.
Unearned is all luck.
No, I know. But you know, I at least it feels good to use this Green Palatine squad. Every time I use them, I'm so impressed. So yeah, it feels good.
The only thoughts I have apart from I want a rematch with different dice is not anytime soon though. Tactically, there are a few things like so overall, even assuming that the War Dog, assuming that the Immolator and the Red Squad was wiped out, the War Dogs obliterated, the first two squads they came across and stuff. There are a few things I would have to take into account that I could change. Like, even assuming the best happened in my first turn, essentially what I'm beginning to gather is that with Knights is, especially with like this, is to essentially play defensively and actually to hide behind cover and pop out only when you need to and fire on it. And so like the super aggressive units like the War Dog Carnivore or the Rampager, to actually constantly keep them in reserve and use them to lash out against the enemy. Of course, the mission objective required me to push. I could probably thin out his army until he had almost nothing, and so basically when he would come out towards me, I'd be behind cover, and then I would get to choose my target. So if I would have went second, I probably would have had a far better strategic game. So with me going first, I should have just shifted the position of, if I went first, I should have shifted the position of things around a bit more, but by going second, probably would have had some better workarounds there. It didn't work too well for me. As far as I can tell, it's like I should use the melee guys to protect my front line and just have my guys rotate around and just shoot around cover and stuff and delete things as they go. But it is hard to say because my opponent does have a lot of tanks that just show up out of any angle, out of nowhere. So it is hard to say what would have been the right thing to do, but probably to play them much more defensively. And I do see why in tournaments they bring like 14 War Dogs, even though it's not as cool. And yeah, And yeah, and GG's, GG. Well, not really GG's, but
It was a game.
it was.
I do actually have one more thought.
Oh.
With the Calidus assassin, I wasn't sure. So she was 115. Now she's 90. So she's way less expensive, way easier to fit into a list. But she can't vect almost anything. So really, especially against his army, the only thing useful that I was going to be vecting would be like a command reroll. But even that being the case, I still think she's worth the 90, and I still might even prefer her at 90 than 115, even with a crappier vec, just because she can get me that deploy teleport home.
Yeah. Alright then. I no clue what we're doing next week, but like the video if you like the video, share if you want to share it, and more to come, and the recap follows. Bye.